So, hi everyone. Yaroslav, I'm hoping that I'm pronouncing your name correctly.
That's correct enough.
Okay. Okay. Well, he is getting a tour of the OSF today. I'm Johanna. I work at the Center for Open Science. I'm going to show him around, answer any questions, and this broadcast will be posted online for anyone else who's interested in watching. And feel free to comment on it and ask questions yourself, and I can answer those afterward as well. So, um, for you, Yaroslav, what kind of have you looked at the OSF at all yet, or are you totally unfamiliar?
I looked at it pretty much since a while, and I've tracked its activities since a while, but I never created my own project. I believe I contributed, or maybe just looked through the other projects, and whenever I went to create my project, I was just wondering what would be the ideal setup to address my own use case.
Okay.
I
Um,
wondered, yeah.
what would your use case be?
Okay, so in my case, I want to establish a project which would be called tentatively Open Consent Form,
Hmm.
where we first collect number of statements from already existing consent forms from different institutions with the purpose to unify them to provide maybe more solid and commonly accepted phrasing for how could we embed in those consent forms permissions to release data publicly while addressing all the privacy concerns. Because the current problem, not only in the States but around the globe, that people, even if they want to release their data publicly, which includes research on humans, right? They need to go through all those ethics committee approval. And at least in the States, there is no there is centralized laws, but then all those committees, they're pretty much per institution, and they have their own opinions, right? And it becomes really sometimes hard to persuade them that whatever you want to do is not violating established norms. And especially it
Okay.
becomes increasingly different in current state of, you know, machine learning tools that we could identify people maybe based on bite marks. That's what a concern of UK people, I believe, that they have quite extended databases collected or of like biomarker,
Mhm.
right? And if we release, let's say, full brain MRI image with high resolution full head, which includes those teeth, then you could bring this association between people. So how could we protect our subjects, right, and outline specifically steps what researchers would do to protect that in realm of sharing neuroimaging data? Now, usually it boils down, oh, we'll remove all personal information like social security, all this stuff, right? But it's not only thing which is pertinent to neuroimaging data. That's why I just wanted to establish these projects where first we collect samples and then maybe work together to formalize some wording which might be acceptable in wider audience.
So, so then your project, what you're working on in terms of the filization needs that you have, and saying that so
Hmm.
you'll have samples, you'll have consent forms, I guess, that you're looking at. You're not working by yourself, you have other
Hmm.
collaborators. You're drawing up drafts of potential consent text. Is that correct? Okay. Okay. So the OSF can help with all of these things. The idea is just that you are creating an organized place where you can work with your own collaborators and potentially share it if you would like to. So you
Hmm.
said that you haven't made a project, so I can guide you through doing that on the OSF. Is that good?
I've created it, but then I removed it, so we could redo it again.
Okay, so we'll start from the beginning then, and I'll show you around some of the features that you might not find on your own. Okay?
Okay, should I screen share my screen, I guess, the
I
window
can
with
actually do that
OSF?
for you so that you can see where I'm clicking. and that way viewers can also see how I'm making the project, and then if you want to follow along on your computer.
Okay,
Sound
sure.
good? Okay. So I will share my OSF. You can see it okay? See my desktop?
Okay, let me make it bigger so I could actually read stuff. Yep.
Okay, great. So when I sign into the OSF, I'm brought to my dashboard. Um, on the left, you'll see a list of all the projects that I am listed as a collaborator on, a contributor on. And on the right, you can see updates to projects that I have said that I want to follow. So to make a new project, what you do is you just click New Project. And you give it a title. So you said that you have a tentative title. I'm just going to call mine a demo project. You can provide a description. This is just going to be a short little blurb. Should not be as long as an abstract, maybe a sentence.
Exactly. That was my initial mistake that I've put.
Right.
This description here allows big edit box, and whenever you go later on to modify it, it will be just one tiny edit box with like 80 symbols, and you had to maneuver in it. And what are those templates for?
Well, just so you know, the wiki allows you to elaborate more. So if you felt like the description wasn't enough, you can use the wiki, and I'll show you how to do that. Templates are a way to build a project based on a project that exists already. So if you have been perhaps running the same, you ran one study and you're changing your stimulus set, then you might want to use the same organizational structure. So you might have one project with 3 smaller components, and maybe one of those components also has a component within it, and you would like to keep that same structure and titles of all of those, the project and components. You can use this as a template. So you could search through your projects, or you could search through public projects. So if I searched for IAT, any project that's on the OSF that is public is able to be used as a template. And that won't copy content, it just copies the structure.
Okay, got it.
So I'm making a new project though, and I'm just going to build my own structure. So I'm just going to say, I'm going to provide a brief description. And I'm not going to worry about the template, so I'll create a new project.
Yep.
And I'm brought to the projects dashboard. So we were previously on my user dashboard, and now I'm on the projects dashboard, where I can get an overview of all the smaller parts that make up the project. Since it's brand new, there's nothing here. But one of the first... Oh, go ahead.
I just wonder from here on, which, let's say, categories would you suggest, like, given my description, what should be my next step? I could fill up wiki, which I did before, with some basic description, but how should I organize it? Is there a point to create those components? Right? And what this component is? Is it just kind of, every component will have its own files and wiki, or what is component?
Every component, like you said, does have its own files, it does have its own wiki, and it also has its own contributors. So, and privacy as well. So one thing for you, what I would suggest is a sample set component.
Exactly, that's what I'm creating.
So I'll put one in as well. So for others, this could be, your data set. You could have a component for if you're running an experiment and not just working with collectible data. If you're running an experiment, you might have the scripts or manipulations uploaded. You could upload IRB applications. You could upload.
So I better select data, right? What does it mean to be a category data then from procedure or instrumentation? Or it's
Right
just a
now,
label?
right now, the categories do not have any impact on your component.
Okay.
So it's just a label. It won't change anything as you work with the OSF. In the future, you might be able to um, view all of your data set components or search through all of the public data sets on the OSF. But right now, in selecting a category when you make a component, it doesn't have any bearing on your functionality.
Okay.
Okay?
Got it. Mm-hmm.
So when you make a component, you're brought inside that component. So you can see if I edit the wiki, and as you know, the wiki is just a page that you can edit as many times as you like. A lot of people use it to maybe provide something of an abstract, to host important figures. Maybe their like most important figure from the paper that they wrote or their analyses. They might post this here. Since you can change it infinitely, you can also include dynamic information. So if you're using this to organize a lab, you might have a weekly reading list that you change every week, and you could put up and change the wiki every week. So I'm going to just do a demonstration here. So this I'm just typing stuff. You could get a preview. You can fold things. You can format with these icons on the top and save it. One other thing to note is that you can have extra wiki pages. So this sample set component doesn't have to have just one wiki page. If you had extra information that maybe you didn't want to put all on the same page, but it did still belong to that component, you might add another wiki page. So perhaps you would say on one wiki page for you, like how you obtained the sample set from maybe from the US, from the UK, from different countries, because maybe the process is different in each place.
Right. For these samples, so I could create subcomponent, right, of the component, or there is no full hierarchy. Let me see.
So components, when you make a component and you select a category and it's created like this sample set component, I chose data, and that means that I can't nest any more within it. Projects, however, you can nest as many components inside as you like. So if you would like to have a third level, so right now from my home project, I have the top level of demo project, a lower level of sample set. If I wanted to have a level below these components that get listed here, I would have to make another project within this project. So I'm just going to call it subproject. And when I choose the category, then I would select project. Everything else here, hypothesis, methods and measures, all of these do not allow further nesting, but project does.
Okay, so I would need to remove previously created component and modify it to be projects, right?
So if you wanted to nest more within that. So if you see, now I'm in sub-project and you see that I can add a component here. But if I visit the first one that I categorized as data, sample set was categorized as data, I can't add another component here.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay. But both have their own wikis. Note that I haven't added any wiki content to the sub-project, but the sample set I did. They have their own files, and I can show you how to do contributors now too. So I'm on my top level. the demo project. You can add contributors who are either registered with the OSF or unregistered. So if I add you, that's not your last name, is it?
It is.
Oh, I got
What
confused.
you were expecting?
I don't know. So I will add you. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make you give you read and write permissions. So there are different levels of permissions on a project. Administrators can edit a project. They can upload and download files. They can add contributors and modify contributors' permissions. Someone with read and write access can do all of the wiki editing and upload and downloads of files, but they cannot affect contributors' permissions like the administrator can. Here's a summary. And read just means that your name is listed, but you can't change the project in any way. So I'm making it so that you can't affect the contributor permissions, but you can do whatever else you like. And I'm going to add you to the sample set component, but not subproject. So now you'll see. And say that maybe I am the one making the OSF project, but I'm not necessarily the lead on the research. I could make you listed first by just dragging and dropping you ahead of me. And I'd save the changes. And what you'll see is that your name is now listed first. Okay. And if I visit my dashboard so that I can see the other components, the sample set, you're listed here. But when I dragged you to be essentially first author, first contributor on the demo project, it didn't affect the sample set. So that's because, and all of the components have their own contributor list, because that way you can give credit for exactly what someone's working on. So perhaps you have a research assistant who is helping collect data, but they're not going to do anything with the analysis. Or maybe you had a statistic consultant help you with your analysis, or a colleague helped with the paper writing. You can add them as a contributor on a component, and they'll get their name listed there. They'll get the credit that they should be given, and you can give them editing privileges if you like, but the overall project maintains its unique contributor list. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yep. So for among those, so we figured out that I should have created project instead of data. Is there any specific characteristic of sub-project component to be listed as data? Is like data could be synchronized to Dropbox while project cannot be, or something like that. Is there a specific feature of data?
The only difference in all of those categories is that project allows you to nest and the rest do not.
Okay.
So if you'd like, one simple thing to do is to just make all components that you ever make projects.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing in the background.
Yeah. Okay. So you were saying sync with Dropbox. Would you like me to show you how to do that?
Well, I kind of saw it, but that means that I would need to pretty much provide full access to my entire Dropbox, right?
No, it doesn't actually.
Oh, good. So, okay, keep going then.
Say that I want to add Dropbox to the files in my sample set component. I'll click into the component or the project that I want to add Dropbox to, and then I'll visit Settings. In Settings, I'll say, I want to link to Dropbox. And I'll say, OK. So for those of you who are viewing this broadcast and are not actually part of the conversation, the OSF is designed so that we can link with other services. Because the idea for the OSF is that you can share and collaborate easily, but it's kind of a a big drag to have to learn a new system, to have to adopt a new technology. So what we'd like to do is hook up with the services that people are already using. Um, so if you have a Dropbox account, you can, and you're maybe using that to organize your files, you can add that Dropbox folder to an OSF project without having to copy the files over. You'll just have another door to your Dropbox account. So what I'm doing is I said, yes, I want Dropbox. I'm going to give Dropbox permission and the OSF permission to talk to one another. And now you can see my Dropbox folder. This is mine. If I wanted to use my full Dropbox, like you were saying, I could. I could add the whole contents of it. But I don't necessarily have to. I could add just a little piece of my COS folder. Or I could put in, I don't have any subfolders in my example folder, but I'll add, let's add example folder. So you can see Dropbox/example folder. And if I visit my files page, contents of that example. Again, just another view of the dashboard of the contents of a project. So it will show you your file tree. It'll show you a brief bit of your wiki and your components. But it doesn't give you full access to everything. It's just an overview. So you can see here the contents of the Dropbox, but to edit, I have to click on Files.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing that I want to, just to illustrate how the add-on works, I'm going to switch the way my screen sharing is working. Hello. And we'll add my whole desktop. Oh, that was some exciting recursive stuff going on. Okay, so you can still see my desktop, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is delete one of these files, and you'll see that I'll get a notification from Dropbox. So I'm going to delete this GIF. And it was deleted from my Dropbox folder because the two are talking to one another. So if I upload a file, it's uploaded and I can look at it and Dropbox knows that it was. The OSF allows you to render files so you can see a preview of a file without having to download it. Look, those are the contributors. And we can render most file types. So images, code, Word documents, PDFs, what else? Excel files, so data sets are all fine. And even if we can't show you an image of it, you can still download it. So here we have an example file that you can preview. You can also download it. And here on the right, you can see the version of the file and the date that it was uploaded, and you can download it. The great thing about the OSF that allows you to not ever lose a version of something is that you can make edits to a file and create and not lose the changes from the previous version. So I'll make a new document. And I'll save it. let's save it to my Dropbox.
So that document will go to Dropbox, right? And you
So
somehow
what I just
transparently
did,
manage the versions, right?
right. So what I just did is I said that I want to put it in my Dropbox and I'm going to put it in example folder. So right now, I'm not doing anything with the OSF. This is just a text edit application on my computer.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm saving this file in my Dropbox. Has nothing to do with the OSF. Can I just do, let's just do it like that, I guess. So I'm going to save it. And if I refresh the OSF, which is talking to Dropbox, I'll see that file that I just made. And that's
Okay, and if somebody clones, I see forks, right? There is forks. What are those? If somebody forks and he would get access to the same Dropbox, I guess, but wouldn't be able to modify it, or would be able to modify it, and
so
will I see the
when you,
change? Oh, let's say actually, let me go to your project, right?
yeah, you can do that. And one thing to note is that since we're connecting with different services, we have to, ooh, that's exciting. Okay. Since we're connecting with different services, we have to abide by the different rules that they have. So Dropbox, for example, one of their maybe limitations or the way that they have designed their product is so that it will keep different versions for you, but it'll only keep a version for 30 days. So one of the limitations of using Dropbox is that you can't register the contents of a Dropbox. Because for us, registering means that we create an uneditable permanent copy of a project.
Mm-hmm.
So you have your original, which you can edit, but then you have the frozen version. Because of the way that Dropbox works, you can't hold on to previous versions of a file for more than, like I said, 30 days, and that kind of that doesn't work with the registration idea. So what it is when you say that you want to add an add-on, a different service like GitHub or Dropbox or Figshare, which they're all listed in the select add-ons portion under settings.
Mm-hmm.
When you add them, you'll see a list of its advantages, or maybe not advantages and disadvantages, but it's the capabilities and allowances that you have for each service. So I can show you again. Let's switch back. So if I go to my storage, I'm going to unselect just to let you see it. By the way, I took Dropbox off now, and so if I visit my files page, I won't see Dropbox there. But so when I select it, it tells you the different terms. So in terms of permissions, making the project public or private is independent of your Dropbox privacy. Forking is what you were asking about. So forking a project or component doesn't copy Dropbox authorization unless the user forking the project is the same user who authorized the Dropbox add-on. So if I forked my project that I had added Dropbox to, I would be able to have a copy of that Dropbox. You should not be able to. So let me add it back. And I'm still hooked up to example folder. And you are going to try and fork it, correct?
Okay, let's try it. Fork.
So when you visit the forks page, that shows you a list of all of the forks. But in order to actually create a fork, you have to visit the top right.
Oh, right, I forgot. Indeed.
And there's
this one.
Yeah, the top right, and you can select what version of duplicating. So I already told you about templates, but you'll want to select fork.
By the way, whenever I've created sub-projects as projects of existing one, right? Then they all appeared separately on my dashboard, right?
Yes,
So
yes, because your user
so they
dashboard
become.
shows you a list of all of your projects.
Okay.
So, so you're on the dashboard for your fork of it. And note a couple of things. I added Dropbox to the sample set component. So since you were not the authorizer for that Dropbox folder, when you forked it, you don't get access to it. And that's what we expected.
Okay.
Another thing to note is that the project that I created, my sub-project, which was another piece of the demo project, isn't listed there because it was private and you were not a contributor. So you can only fork the public contents of a project.
Got it.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Great.
So if I wonder what should be optimal setup for me if I want to have some document modifiable but by people, but more in GitHub fashion, that I want people to introduce changes and somebody would review them and agree to accept them or not. So this forking has nothing to do with that, right? This is just pretty much creating a separate project, or there inside somehow there is facility to merge changes back.
So right now we don't have any merging capabilities. And for those of you who are watching and are not familiar with forking and merging, the idea is that a fork creates an editable version of something that you are the contributor on. So if I, Johanna, make a project, make it public so that you can see it, and then you, the other researcher, or Yaroslav, whoever, comes along and says, I'm really interested in that work and I have a new direction that I'd like to take it in. You can copy my work and give me credit at the same time by forking it. So what you'll do is you follow the steps that Yaroslav just did. You'll make a fork which creates a new project that you are listed as the contributor on, and you can make changes to it. It copies all of the content. It copies the files, it copies the wiki contents, the components. The exception that we just saw is Dropbox and other add-ons as well, because they are associated with my own user privileges. You can host files on the OSF, and then when someone forks it, they'll get those files, so long as you've made them public. Merging is the idea that you, the other researcher who forked my work, have edited something and want to tell me that you think that these ideas are good, that they should be put back into my work. So right now, the OSF does not have a way to merge different forks of work. One thing that you can do, however, is we do allow discussion via the commenting application. So you can make comments on a project so long as someone has enabled that feature. I'm going to show you that. So right now I'm on the user or the project dashboard for my demo project. If you see at the top right here, there's a little chat bubble. If I click on that, we can add a comment. And Yaroslav, you should be able to comment back.
Whenever I see it, Okay, oh, I'm in my fork. Okay, let me go to the original one. And then that was specific component? No, that was on top.
I did it on the project. So if you open that up.
I have it opened, but okay, let me refresh it.
Also note that you have a 1 at the top right because you forked it. There's one fork of the project.
Yep.
So you should be able to click
on that, hello there.
And you can see my comment.
And I can mark you as spam, hate
Yes, you
speech,
can.
violence, or harmful behavior. Okay, good.
Banned this
So that's where
box
discussion could happen, and then yeah, and then I could introduce those changes which were commented, or I could remove my own comment, but not the comment somebody posted, right?
right,
Let's say like in Google Docs there is resolve button, right?
right.
So I couldn't resolve it.
And
It would
the
need to be here.
commenting features can be enabled or unenabled in the project settings. Again, I click here, same place as where you add add-ons, and say only contributors can post comments, or if the project is public, any OSF user can post comments.
Okay.
So just then,
But once again, to remove, it will need to be the originator of the comment who could remove the comment and probably all the comments to the comment, right?
right. But if something's marked as spam, that is a little different.
Yeah, but we don't want to do that.
Right. um, let's see. So one other thing to note is privacy. So we've been working, all of these projects and components that we've made have been by default private. So if you look at the top right of a project, the private button is selected. You can keep a project private for as long as you like, and what that means is that only the people listed here in contributors can see it. You can make pieces of your project public, though. So say maybe I want to make the overall project public. I'll say okay. And that means that anyone, not just OSF users, but anyone can view this work. So this URL is accessible by anyone on the internet. If I click into my sample set component, though, you'll see that this is still private. I can make it public, but what happens if I'm logged out of the OSF? So if I pretend I'm going to open an incognito window and pretend that I'm just someone who is poking around on the OSF. If I tried to go to that URL, I would be told, no, you cannot. And that's because it's private.
Okay.
So you can switch things back and forth. If you create a registration of something, like I said, that's a frozen version of the project. It's time-stamped so that the idea is that you can maybe pre-register a hypothesis. Say, before you collect your data, you can say, this is what I'm anticipating seeing. I said this at whatever date. When you create a registration, it will only register the it should only register the public information. So I'm going to do a basic template. There are several more in-depth templates for registrations, and what these are is they now allow you to add metadata to your work. So I'm going to create a registration pretending that I'm about to collect data. And I'll say maybe I wrote my hypothesis in the wiki, which I'm only pretending that I did, but I'm going to make a note of that. No data collected yet. This registration will point back to the original project. Note that it says in the watermark, read only, read only. And it is public because the project that I registered was public.
Okay, and this one, it encapsulates the state of the project at this point.
Right, so the state of the project when it was registered. Make further changes and register it again. So if I go to the wiki now and say data collection started this week.
So if somebody familiar with Git, that would be like a tag, right? Which pretty much describes the state of the entire project at this point, right? With some description.
I believe so. It would be more of a commit, I think. I'm not too familiar with tags.
Commit usually just kind of, okay.
I might
Commit
not.
might be more like a change to the wiki, right? So that's just a change to specific part of the project. Whenever tag would be more kind of enclosing the entire state of the project, right? Because by registrations, we are creating description for, oh, we've been at this state along the project, right? So, and that will include all the changes to any component we've made so far, right?
Yes, so that's true. And you can also register, one second, data collection. Done. So you can register only pieces of the project. So right now, I'm registering the overall thing. But if I wanted to, I could go into the sample set component and um, register only that piece. Note that the wiki,
Oh, okay.
the items is still there, and my new update is here. And if I go back to the original project, I can visit registrations to see a list of them. And here's the first one. Here's the second one. Oh, I have that backwards. Here's the first one, and here's the second one. And they are time-stamped and uneditable, except for privacy. And like I said, I could go into, say, let's go to sub-project. I could register just the contents of the sub-project. Okay?
And are you in Britain or you just live on GMT time?
I guess it's just the default. I'm in Virginia in the US. This is, yeah, so this is a...
I guess timestamps are just universally
Yeah.
GMT or something like that.
Do you have other questions?
Okay, so I still wonder what's the ideal way for me. So if I want some document to be collaboratively created, right?
Mm-hmm.
First of all, of course, I could just do it in the wiki and let people, contributors, to modify the wiki,
Right.
And then I will see the history, how it was modified, but it will be in a wiki fashion that pretty much I cannot, well, I can probably undo it, but it's not like review procedure, it's just
Right.
modification in place.
The wiki does
If I link to
changes,
GitHub,
but there isn't an accept or reject the changes option.
right, that's right. And if I add GitHub component, that will just list the files which are available in that GitHub thing for that component, right? And I will be able to modify them externally, and those changes will be reflected on OSF website, but I wouldn't be able to modify it in place probably, right? Will it be?
So right now,
Okay.
OSF does not allow you to change the contents of a file. And like, yeah, as you seem to understand, you can upload, download, and change the files on your computer and then put up new versions of them. And we'll keep track of all of those. But you can't edit code or text or a data set directly in your browser.
Okay. Is there any work ongoing or anything like that to enable, let's say, I don't know, backend to Google Drive with ability to modify those files and be reflected on the OSF webpage, or maybe built-in capabilities, I don't know, like on cloud, I believe at some point they developed this also collaborative editing of the files.
Right.
Is there anything like that coming up?
I think that that is a direction that we would like to head, in keeping with our goal of just simplifying the research process and the collaboration process in general. I'm not positive about when that would first occur. I would expect, although I'm not a developer and I'm um, by far certainly not the final word on our calendar of tasks, um, I would expect that a first step in that direction would be, like we were talking about earlier, merging changes to a project. So my bet would that it would be not on-screen editing, but a project owner accepting somebody else's version. But
Right, or maybe just link into some service which provides that functionality. So
right.
we
That
could
would
kind of stay within OSF, but if my project is public, right? Now I'm myself, so I cannot and you made myself contributor to this project. But if somebody sees my project, could they apply directly somewhere on the website to become a contributor?
No, actually, um, not right now. We are working on um improved user profiles. So right now, if you click on the little person on the top right of your in the black navigation bar, you'll be brought to your user profile, and that doesn't actually give very much information on you. But one of the things that we're working on improving is allowing you to customize this a little bit more, give more information, contact information, a CV maybe, or link to your GitHub account or a FakeShare account if you would like to. Um, so what someone would be able to do is see on a project that you are listed as a contributor there, and then they could click and find out how to contact you. But right now, we
Okay.
don't have a way to enable to request to join a project.
Okay. Okay. So it might be worth then adding those instructions into the wiki of the project, so people who come who know whom to contact, right?
Right, right. That would be the
Okay.
solution for now. But again, yes, we do like um, new features seem to come out constantly. Things are changing, and there are a lot of exciting, very exciting projects going on. One thing that's coming up is checklists. You can have a to-do list. Um, we're working with several other groups for different add-ons. Um, so more and better functionality is being worked on all the time.
Okay, cool. Gotcha. Okay, I'll digest it and figure out what is the optimal way to go. Thank you
Great.
very much.
Thank you. Let me know if you have any questions in the future. Just send an email.
Okay. Yeah, I'll bombard you with emails if
Go
anything.
for it.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. And for anyone else who's watching this broadcast, feel free to send me an email. I am Johanna, Johanna, at cos.io. You can also comment on the broadcast or in the Google group. Thank you very much.